The Federalist. Good morning, Mollie. How are you?
Great. It's great to be here with you.
Mollie, I had Matt Continetti on earlier today. The most important question in the campaign left is whether or not the Presidential Debate Commission will provide moderators who will press Donald Trump as hard, Joe Biden as hard as they pressed Donald Trump. Matt and I don't think they will. What do you think?
I don't think they will, and I actually wish that Republicans in general would care more about the double standards that are applied to them versus other people, that they're treated like second-class citizens all the time, whether it's in debates or otherwise, and they should care more about it. But even though I don't think that the commission will provide that, I'm not entirely sure Donald Trump needs it. He seems to do better the worse that the media are for him, so he'll probably do fine no matter who the moderator is.
He may not need it, but the country does. I have watched the debate coverage
Absolutely.
this week, and unless you watched Fox, I have to say this about my own network, there was not one Donald Trump supporter in anywhere I could find outside of Fox talking about the Democratic convention. It's as though half of the country doesn't exist for 9/10 of the media.
Which is also as per usual. But, it's kind of a shame because I think Republicans, obviously the ratings aren't good for these virtual debates, and I doubt it'll be particularly good for the Republican one either. But
I agree.
Republicans really are paying attention to this, and I think they would be really interested to find out that Republicans kind of thought the Democratic convention went well for Republicans. And that's an important part of the story as well when you see that there are these enthusiasm gaps. And when Republicans look at what the Democrats offered and they say, you know what, I think we're in pretty good position for November, that's an interesting story, and that should be told by our media as well.
It is interesting over this week. I have played one speech 4 times, AOC's. I've played it in its entirety without editorializing before and talk about it afterwards because I wanted people to hear what the real Democratic Party believes. And I played Joe Biden today. I played Chris Coons. I'm not afraid of what they have to say, but I comment on what they didn't discuss, Molly. They didn't discuss China. They didn't discuss Russia. They didn't discuss Israeli UAE peace deal. They don't discuss Iran. I mean, they just don't discuss stuff that is difficult, or the Green New Deal.
Well, I'm glad you noticed there was almost no foreign policy discussion. And what they did discuss was praise for the Iraq war, which seems like a very weird thing to put forward to the country. They also didn't discuss the riots that are hitting the cities. I think Republicans were worried that someone important was going to go out and pull a Bill Clinton Sister Soldier moment where you triangulate and condemn the fringe of your own party to make yourself seem more moderate. They never did that. And I was certain Barack Obama might think about doing it because of the place where he chose to give his speech and his early praise for the country's founding and the Constitution. I thought he was really in a place to condemn the violent riots that are gripping the nation. Nope,
He didn't do it. Didn't do it. In fact, I think you've just made a very profound point. I'm happy it's done. I'm going to go with the Washington Post coverage right after this show. I'm very pleased. Matt Continetti calls the race a jump ball. I think he's exactly right. How do you assess it at this point, Molly?
I thought the race really began just because of the weirdness of this year with the coronavirus shutdowns and everything. The race really began with the pick of Kamala Harris. And so even though the media have really tried hard to say it's over, there's literally nothing that Republicans can do, I think it's a tight race. I think it will be a tight race. And I think that they were wrong to proclaim it over in June and July. And so I'll be interested. But we haven't had the Republican convention. Not that conventions make a big difference in the ultimate vote. People usually get a little bit of a bounce after a convention. That's very normal, but it's not really a sustained bounce. But I am curious to see how Republicans do things and getting the campaign going. And I think that'll be important for Biden because he hasn't really had to campaign yet.
I was struck yesterday by President Trump's emphasis on oil, gas, and fracking in Pennsylvania. I suspect if they pull this off correctly, they'll find 5 points to repeat. One of them will be the absurdity of the Green New Deal and the necessity of fracking. I mean, I would just hit that 1,000 times in the time allotted to me. I don't know that the Republicans have the depth or the TV production capacity. And Molly, you know this. I was explaining to Ronna McDaniel this week. If you look at any television show, there is never, very rarely, I shouldn't say never, there is rarely a one-person address to the camera. And when that happens, it's only for a minute or two. That's because it's not good television. There is no speech channel. Do you think the Republicans have the talent pool to produce a sustained, positive, upbeat, record-driven messaging next week?
I've covered so many conventions, both Democrat and Republican, and usually the Republican convention production qualities are far below, like far dramatically below the Democratic National Convention. I think in this case, you won't see that difference. I'm not sure if I expect it to be much better, but my husband said something about how the Democratic Convention, for all of the Hollywood people involved in it, didn't match the production level of a local news show.
I agree.
And that
Mark
was
is right.
weird to see. I mean,
Yeah.
and also when you combine that with sort of the general condescending tone of their celebrity moderators for the evening and whatnot, it just was not a good feeling. So I don't think that Republicans have far to go to exceed it, but it really is a brutal way to do a convention when you're so used to doing it the other way. So I don't think people should be smug and expecting Republicans to be, putting on the greatest show on earth or anything.
I would put Trump out there more than Joe Biden was out there. In fact, my one suggestion to Ronna was put the president in a room with Martha McSally, Tom Cotton, Mike Gallagher, and Dan Crenshaw and talk about the defense buildup, because you got all four combat veterans, Air Force, Army, Marines, and Navy. And with Crenshaw and his eye patch and Martha being the first woman fighter pilot in combat, I think there are things they can do. I hope they're thinking outside of the box. I want to go back with you, Mollie, to the debates. They will be the critical events. And Donald Trump could blow them. Joe Biden could blow them. But I am worried about a Candy Crowley moment protecting. If Joe Biden goes off on this Charlottesville stuff like he did last night, a moderator has got to give Trump the opportunity to respond or has to correct the mischaracterization of Trump's address. I don't know who I trust to do this. Who do you trust? I would trust you. I would trust me. And I would be hard on Trump, too, as I was 4 years ago. But who do you trust to do this?
I actually worry that the media as an institution is so corrupted that nobody in the institution can do a particularly good job with it. The Charlottesville lie being a great example, because the media were really the ones who created that lie. So how are they going to hold Joe Biden accountable for telling the lie that they created? And when you have such powerful, unaccountable group like the media, and they have put all of their cards on the Democratic Party candidate, it's just the whole thing is a problem. So I think maybe you could look at people outside that institution. I think conceivably you could have no moderator, just have some rules that both sides agree to and have the candidates debate each other. But I do think, there are people who would be good and fair and would ask tough questions of both sides. And I'm pretty biased in favor of Brett Baer on that score, who does Special Report at Fox News, which is just the greatest hour of news on television. And he's tough on everybody, and I think tough on everybody would be a perfectly great posture.
I've also adopted the theory that you could go with a Lester Holt, a Dana Bash, or a John Dickerson, or certainly a Brett, and put on either side of them a known partisan. They could put a Mollie Hemingway or a Hugh Hewitt on one side and a Rachel Maddow and a Chris Hayes on the other side, and you would have a lively, fair debate. But what we can't have is Candy, and I like Candy. Candy was a guest until she retired. But we can't have that 3 nights in a row, and God, please not the town hall. That's such a waste of the time. Do you have any hope that they'll do it? I mean, the Presidential Debate Commission is of and in the Manhattan Beltway media elite grip.
Well, and that was proven when they wouldn't move up the debates. We have this mad rush for everybody to be voting early, and they wouldn't move the debates up so that people could hear a debate before they vote. And that is really inappropriate when they are the Presidential Debate Commission. It did not inspire confidence.
Yeah, I am not confident either. So does Biden have to come out of the basement now? The vice president gave a good speech. Matt thought it was the best speech of his career, actually, and I don't think I'm going to go that high. I think it was a good speech. But I don't know that will be enough to keep him in a sustained engagement. In his first interview with David Muir being alongside Kamala Harris, that means he's got to help her for the tough spots. And she's very good. I think the Beltway underestimates Kamala. I watched her rise through California for a decade, and I think she's much better than her campaign was. Do you think he'll have to engage one-on-one with serious people?
That's why I actually think that everything's different now. That hide in the basement strategy was actually a very good political strategy for him. Let the media do everything that normally a candidate would do in terms of going after his opponent. But at some point, that just doesn't work. And while he did, I mean, people say he had a great speech last night. I don't remember a single line from the speech, except for the lie that he told, and his mention of what he would do regarding coronavirus. That is the same as what is currently being done
It's
on
exactly
coronavirus.
it's exactly the same.
But I think and I also don't think it was the best speech of his career. And I don't really remember his speeches, but I do remember him having like a good one when he ran as vice president. I don't remember which one it was, probably the first time, 2008. So I don't even think it was necessarily the best of his career, but he will absolutely have to engage. But if he can still keep from having that daily grind of campaigning, I think the questions about his cognitive decline will be less pronounced, because it's not that he ever had trouble in speeches or debates even. I mean, if you remember the Democratic debates, not like anyone said he did like particularly great, but he survived them. And it's that daily grind on the campaign trail where he starts to break down and lose himself a little bit. And if he can
I
avoid
think
that, I think that's what he's hoping for.
the framing should be questions about his energy and acuity. I think that's actually what we're talking about. Does he have the energy to be president? Does he have the acuity to remain on all the time? Because whatever you say about Donald Trump, his energy level's off the charts. And what people complain about is not his acuity, it's whether or not he is actually well learned and versed in some issues, but he goes with his instinct. And I think that's his strength in many sense. Last minute to you, Molly. What do you think the GOP ought to focus on next week?
I think that they should never forget that people like to vote for actual policies and whatnot. Everyone thought that because Trump was so charismatic that they were just brought in by that. But he actually had a message that he was conveying to people through those campaign events in 2016. Is they need to make sure that they explain what the successes of the Trump administration have been and how they will continue. And I think they have a lot that they can work with there. And they should be laser focused on appealing to those moderate voters or those independent voters that Hillary Clinton lost and that Joe Biden is sometimes trying to get and sometimes turning off with his Kamala Harris type pick.
Quick bonus question. I think the judiciary issue plays well with that crowd far more than the media gives it credit for. Do you agree with me, Molly?
1 in 4 Trump voters voted for him because of their concern about court. Obviously, this is a huge issue. And remember, people voted for him not knowing he would actually be good on that issue. They were like, he'll be less bad than Hillary Clinton. And yeah, not only is he less bad, he has surpassed, I think, everyone's expectations of what a Republican president could achieve.
He's the best we've ever had in the modern era, by far, by leaps and bounds. Mollie Hemingway, thank you from the Federalist. Follow